الحمد لله وكفى والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذين جاهدوا فينا لنهدينهم سبلنا سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. One of the notions that a person gains with time and with experience is that many things can go wrong in the world. And that when those things go wrong, people appreciate that which they once had. I would say that in any given week I receive X number of phone calls or X number of emails, and maybe 60, 70, maybe sometimes up to 80% of the phone calls or emails or requests for people to speak that I receive, they revolve around some difficulty that has fallen on a person that they previously were not experiencing, meaning some new problem that arose in their life. And one of the things that we appreciate, or at least I appreciate with time and with experience, is that many things can go wrong in life. And we should do everything we can to protect us from those types of difficulties. It's very interesting, the way I see things now. Part of it is because I'm trained in the medical field, and so we're trained to always think the worst. And part of it is just having dealt with so many people and so much experience dealing with people that I look at everything I look at what can go wrong. And it's very interesting. This past weekend, my daughter, she's just 2 years old, you see her running around here sometimes. She had an infection of her gums, just some viral infection that kids get. And I'm looking at her gums, and they were really red, and they were very sore, and they were very swollen. And yeah, 99.999% of the time, that'll just be some sort of viral infection. So I'm looking at that, and but however, there is some very, very rare cases, very uncommon, but can happen, where you can have those kind of swollen gums and it can be a type of cancer. So most people are looking at the gums and saying, oh, these are just swollen gums. That's just what this kid has. And I'm looking at the gums and saying, oh, this could be this cancer. How do I know it's not that? That's because once you begin to see things and you realize how things can go wrong, it's the human nature to recognize those types of things. And just give you another example. I talked about this several years ago, but I was skating with my son one time, and I gave this story over a couple of mouthfuls, and I happened to run over his finger. He wasn't wearing gloves that day. I happened to run over his finger with my ice skate, and I literally severed his finger almost in half. I looked down and I saw his finger was disconnected from his, half his finger was disconnected from the other half. And when I went to the surgeon, when we eventually got to the operating room and we met the surgeon said, oh, I see this every week. Then I started thinking, this is not ice skating. These are a bunch of sharp blades moving on ice at 30 miles an hour, and they could cut anybody at any time. And every time I look at the ice rink, I don't see a bunch of people ice skating. I see a bunch of blades flying around. These are very, very sharp, and people are just skating, and most people don't think like that. Most kids especially don't think like that. When we're young, we think we'll never die, we'll never become sick, nothing will ever go wrong, everything will always be, I can stand up in front of a truck and I'll hold the truck back. We think that we have all the power in the world. But the reality is that things can go wrong at any moment. At any moment things can go wrong. Most people look at a door and they simply just see a door. I look at a door and I think that this is a guillotine, because any child could stick their finger in it, and the moment you close the door, you'll cut the finger off. And it happens, 14,000 cases every year. There's some sort of amputation of the finger in a door. So that's just what happens when a person gets older and begins to see all the things that can go wrong. The more we realize what can go wrong, the more we worry about whether that thing is going to go wrong. even more important is that you recognize that in this life, at any moment, what we think we would never become could happen. For example, most of us, when we're young, we're so energetic about our deen, and we think that, we could do anything and we can conquer the world, and that's great. That's how young people think. But the older you get, the more you realize Shaitan is a very slow and wary enemy. He fights you until you become 40, 50, 60 years old, and then when you get older, he begins to play with your mind, and it's a long fight. He doesn't knock you out in the first round. He beats on you with the goal that he's going to knock you out in the 9th round or the 10th round. So then you start realizing that this life is a place of difficulty, and it's a trial, but at any moment, the worst trial is that someone's iman can be uplifted. And essentially, all of life is that way. Things can go wrong at any moment. And we as Muslims have been taught to recognize that. That's the first thing. We have to recognize that we're not immune, that the world is a difficult place, and that things are designed to go wrong. By design, things are going to go wrong. Because death is going to occur by design. So that's like the ultimate wrong, right? That's the greatest loss. You disappear. At least for the people in the life of this world, that's the ultimate. But people get sick, people lose their wealth, people get robbed, people get into accidents, people, bad things can happen. That's the way this world is designed. And things can go wrong at any moment. So as Muslims, we appreciate that. We appreciate that there's calamities, and that calamities can befall a person at any time, at any place, in any way. And the first thing is to appreciate those calamities. And once a person appreciates those calamities, then they recognize that the deen has mechanisms by which a person can protect themselves from those calamities. And they recognize them and they use them. For example, every day, we should give sadaqah. Every day. Now, sometimes we don't appreciate the benefits of sadaqah, but it's very clearly stated in hadith. Very clearly stated. Badiru bis sadaqah. Be consistent and quick. Don't even think twice. Be consistent and quick in sadaqah. Badiru bis sadaqah. فَإِنَّ الْبَلَاءَ لَا يَتَخَطَّاهَا. Because verily, difficulties don't penetrate sadaqah. Okay, so what does this mean? When you hear this type of statement part A of this statement is calamities occur. Calamities are always occurring. It's raining calamities, right? Like I've said before in a talk, it's raining calamities. That's A. B, it's possible to avoid those calamities. It's not that everybody will get hit, despite the fact that it's raining heavily. And how do you avoid those calamities? C, by being consistent and regular and quick and giving sadaqah. This is something all of us should do. All of us should do. Because if we get hit with a calamity, it will cost us money, and it will cost us time, and it will affect us, and it will take us off our path. It'll take us off our trajectory of whatever we're trying to do. And calamities can occur at any moment. It doesn't matter how young you are. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are. It doesn't matter how poor you are. It doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter how smart you think you are. Some people think that only happens to people who don't, dot their I's and cross their T's. I'm a really smart guy. I double, triple check everything, so it won't happen to me, but it happens to everybody else because they don't double, triple check anything. That's not the way calamities work. Calamity can hit anybody at any time. I've seen it. I've seen the spectrum. I've seen it hit the wealthy. The older you get, the more you see. It hits the wealthy. It hits the educated. It hits the poor. It hits the unlettered, etc. It's not, there's no, it's random. There's no pattern to it. So we should recognize that this is a place where calamities can occur at any moment. And we should always beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection. In fact, if you want to say, number one, what's the first protection? The first protection is to always make dua. Is to be persistent and consistent in making dua, recognizing that these calamities can occur at any time. In fact, there's more than one occasion where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked about what type of dua to make, or had advised a companion about what dua to make. And very often the advice was to ask for afiyah, ask for protection. Just general vague protection, just a blanket protection. They call it blanket policy. Blanket protection. Ask for blanket protection because at any moment anything can go wrong. And the worst of which would be that our iman get tampered with or potentially lost. Or a hafid could potentially lose their hifz, right? Or a alim could potentially go off track and lose their knowledge. Whatever it might be, misuse their knowledge. So we should recognize that calamities could occur. We should beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection. Aside from that, we should be consistent in giving sadaqah. Especially in these days when it's cold and there's ice and snow and all these types of things where things can really go wrong. We should be persistent in giving sadaqah. And everybody should have this in their budget. Students, parents, elders. We should consistently give sadaqah. Regularly. A lot of people have this idea that I'm not going to give sadaqah until I pile up a lot of money and then I'm going to give a big donation. That's not the way it works. That you should give sadaqah as much as you can, as frequently you can, as regularly as you can. And the beauty of this is you can even just set it up automatically nowadays. You don't even have to remember. You have to make the intention, but every month it's good to make the intention if you have it automatically set up, but it's something we should do consistently. And the third, if making dua is number one and then giving sadaqah is number two, or simply asking Allah for protection is one and giving sadaqah is number two, then number three is making dua. You'll see that in the treasury of dua, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave many examples, left us many gems that can be recited in the morning, that can be recited in the evening for protection, etc. Protection from the evil eye, protection from difficulties. And I can tell you that on more than one occasion, Shaykh Zulfikar has advised me that you should read these du'as. You should be particular about these du'as. You should make sure that you read these du'as. It's interesting. I recently moved into a new house, and I called Shaykh Zulfikar and I said, Hazrat, we're in this new house, and is there something you would recommend? So he said, make sure you make dua. Make sure you make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you from any difficulty. So I said, gee, Hazrat, of course we'll make dua. Can you advise us what dua should we make, etc.? So he gave me some advice. And then he said, at the very end he said, actually, you should make dua, and you should tell all the people in the family to make the same, make dua as well. So I said, gee, Hazrat, he said, and then again he repeated, he said, you should make dua, and you should tell all the people in your family to make dua. And then he gave me the reason, which was very interesting. He said, the reason is because if you forget one day, at least they will have read it. And if they forget one day, at least you will have read it. Yani, of the 5 people are making dua, 5, 6 people in the family are making dua, then even if 5 forget, at least 1 will have read it. So not only should you make dua, but you should have backup systems to make dua. Like people, if you work in plumbing, you have people who set up a sump pump in the basement. They set up a sump pump and then they set up a backup battery and then they set up a backup pump because they're so afraid of water flooding the basement that they have like 2 or 3 layers of protection. Because they realize that if water gets in the basement, it's a big mess. It's a very costly thing and it can damage, a home. So in the same way, even more so, there should be backups. There should be a backup. This person's reading and this person's reading and this person's reading. And of course, the more that's read, the more the protection will be. The more difficulties that difficulties that would occur could be avoided. So, there's all these numbers in the world. This many break-ins happen every minute. This many people are mugged every minute. This many people are diagnosed with cancer every minute. This many automobile accidents occur every minute. Interestingly, these people can calculate these things. They're so frequent. It's not rare. It's so frequent that you can calculate them and put a number to them. This many people are become sick every minute, whatever it might be. So these calamities are always falling. They're always falling. And for us as a family, we should advise one another to protect ourselves against these calamities. And it's possible. It's not that it's just going to happen and we have to live with it. Yes, if it happens and we have patience and we bear it, but it's possible to protect ourselves. And how many people call me and say, this calamity hit me or that calamity hit me? And the vast majority of time, it's often, you say, how much sadaqah do you give? Oh, I never thought about giving sadaqah. It's a very common question. I'll say, okay, how much sadaqah do you give? Do you give sadaqah? Say, no, I never thought about it, but I'll give it now. Okay, that's great. I mean, you give it now, but this is such a simple thing that we should all be doing. So we should recognize, first point, we should recognize that calamities can occur and that they do occur. And we should not think ourselves immune. To not say, I'm Muslim, so I'm immune. No, we have to beg Allah for forgiveness and for protection, etc. And two, we should be consistent in asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from calamities. And three, we should give sadaqah regularly, even a small amount, whatever you can give. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not looking for a number, He's looking for sincerity. He's looking for you to recognize that He is in control and that only He can protect you. And you say, I'm giving this $1 a day. Ya Allah, I know that your messenger said with his truthful and blessed tongue that if I give sadaqah consistently, that I'll be protected from these types of difficulties. So Ya Allah, I'm asking you to protect me from difficulties. And you give $1 a day. What's 50 cents a day, whatever it might be. People can spend that. That's not a huge amount. And then we should regularly make the du'as that are in the sunnah. We should make them, our kids should make them, our spouses should make them, our loved ones, friends should make them. We should remind people to do this. And as I said, on more than one occasion, Shaykh Zulfikar has given me this advice. So I'm sharing it with you because, it's like a family. You share these types. These are the gems that you receive, and you want to share them with others because you don't want to see anybody go through difficulty. And for the Muslim, it's even more important because when they go through difficulty, they lose the trajectory which they're on, which is their trajectory is towards deen. I mean, these are the handful of people that are serious about their deen and who are trying to establish it and spread it and embed it in their children so that it'll be present for the next generation. So the last thing we would want to see is difficulty befall them. Because if difficulty befalls them, then that affects the effort that we're trying to make. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the reality of all of the different difficulties that exist in the world around us. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from those difficulties, and we ask Him to give us the tawfiq to be consistent in sadaqah and consistent in making those dua that are present in the sunnah of the Blessed Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.